Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the PhinManiacs.com podcast. I am your host, Louis Sung, and tonight my co-host, Chad Ronenbaum, will probably be getting in a little bit late. We got ourselves a bit of a time zone mix-up, so instead I have with me another good friend of mine and a fellow podcaster himself, Mr. Ron Canniff, who has gone through so many Twitter username changes that I honestly don't know what to call him anymore.
You can just still call me Ron, and I'm still at Finn's Broadcaster. That part hasn't changed.
Well, why do you keep changing your name, man? Nowadays, I have to remind myself what you call yourself when I look you up on Twitter. It's like, what does he call himself today? I don't know how to find him.
Well, the last few weeks, I've been changing to whoever's playing the Patriots. So I was Go Chargers this week only. Then I was Go Chiefs this week only. Now I'm Go Rams for 2 weeks only. And then I'll probably change it back to just Ron after the Super Bowl, because these name changes have done so good to keep the Patriots from winning.
I know, man. Like, why don't you do something crazy? Like, I'm actually going to go ahead and say this. What I was trying to say, because we've had a couple of snafus already, but what I was going to try to say before all that happened was that I have to give this disclaimer. PhinManiacs.com is not a groupthink website, and the opinions given do not necessarily reflect that of my own. So when somebody goes and writes a story about how it might be for the best to root for New England because maybe that'll make Brady and Belichick retire, that's not necessarily my opinion. However, you, Mr. Canniff, said something on Twitter this evening that kind of, let's just say did not earn you that many friends.
Well, yeah, here's the thing. I mean, people just disagree with it. I was just retweeting the tweet I saw that somebody said that was the case. All I stated was, well, if that actually was the case, then where do I sign? Where do I sign up for that? If they actually came out and said, hey, if we win the Super Bowl, we out, then why? Let's all root for them. My God, please win the Super Bowl and leave us alone. Get out of our lives. Almost 2 decades of this shit. Pardon me. Crap. I've had enough of this.
Okay. Production manager, make sure to bleep that out.
But I've had enough of it, man. I'm tired of dealing with them. So if it was actually the case, then sign me up. Not that I think it's actually the case.
No,
and nothing I ever say on Twitter anymore earns me any friends. So who cares?
No, the way the Dolphins Twitter is nowadays, it's so polarized and angry. Unless you're talking about Mike Epps and Vero and those guys, in which case you don't really see much more other than ketchup, toilets, and other things that I shall not mention on the air.
Men's body parts.
Yes, men's body parts. That's all they talk about anymore. I thought you guys were Dolphins fans. No. The most critical debate that we're having nowadays is what brand of peanut butter is the best and what kind do you get when you get it, and whether that makes you a horrible person or not.
Yeah, well, I guess there's got to be something to fill the time the next 9 months.
Well, I'm going to say just for me personally, when I ate peanut butter as a kid, it was always Jif, and it was always creamy. So I'm sure that somewhere Mike Epps is just putting for shame on me because, apparently Skippy is number one. I've never even tried Skippy. I don't know what anything about that is.
No, I don't even eat peanut butter, so maybe he won't like me either.
All right. So now, since we don't want to turn into fourth and half an inch, we're going to go ahead and get into some actual Dolphin stuff here. So, pointed to talk about, it looks like the Miami Dolphins coaching staff is starting to come together. We already know for a fact, since the last time we did this show, it was actually in an attempt to discuss what we would do as the GMs of the Miami Dolphins. So we talked about who we would hire as the head coach, who we would look at as quarterbacks, what would we do as far as the approach to the team for the next 2-3 years. And as it turns out, none of us were right, because not only did Darren Rizzi not get the job, and supposedly he'll be coming back, we're hoping against hope that he does return to Miami, and not only is it not Chris Richard of the Dallas Cowboys, now it's going to be the one guy who, I think the only one who actually saw this coming was Adam Beasley of the Herald, so props to him for catching it, but it looks like we're actually going to be getting Brian Flores of the New England Patriots. He's the linebacker coach / de facto defensive coordinator. And not only that, he's going to be bringing in Patrick Graham, a linebacker coach for an inside linebacker coach, because there's a difference apparently. The inside linebacker coach for the Green Bay Packers and the run game coordinator. to be the defensive coordinator now, Patrick Graham. And the offensive coordinator is going to be, I think his name is Chad O'Shea. So if I'm not mistaken, I have to check real quick. I don't remember his first name, but his last name is O'Shea. He is the wide receiver coach for the New England Patriots. He's going to be bringing him along from New England, and he's apparently well respected. He's apparently somebody who has a lot to offer as far as execution and teaching, which is a good thing. So the more that things come together, the more I kind of like it, but I just wanted to see what your thoughts were on this whole thing, because so far this coaching search, it's been really difficult waiting for the announcement to be made. We already know what's going to happen. We already know what we're supposed to expect, but just not hearing the announcement, not getting a press conference, not getting anything like that, it's been incredibly frustrating to not be able to have that. So we're just kind of biding our time until the Patriots either win the Super Bowl and hopefully Brady and Belichick go away forever, or they somehow lose to Sean McVay and the Los Angeles Rams. I got to know the NFL wanted LA in the Super Bowl really quick, because you don't want to miss out on that market. But anyway, that's a conspiracy theory for another night. Go ahead and Ron, and give us your thoughts on the coaching staff that Mr. Flores is putting together, and the fact that we're going to be hiring Brian Flores as the head coach to begin with.
Well, first I got to say that, we need to make great head coaching hire and coach staff hire, because we have to keep up with what the Jets are doing. The Jets are doing some serious work over there with their coaching staff.
Oh yeah, man. Did you see they got
I don't know how we're going to be able to match what they're doing over there. I can't imagine having a coaching staff that all-time perennial on one. What that will do for them, that's just going to bring them to new heights. So then we've got to also be able to catch up with that. But no, and now, as I stare around the room at a floating taco. But okay. So
man, that video, I lost it, man. I lost it. That video.
Yeah, it's great. I've been showing any Jets fans I know, hey, check out this video. And, okay, well, anyway, that aside, I really thought we were going to hire Chris Richards. I had kind of mentally prepared myself for Chris Richards. I was completely on board with Chris Richards, and then all of a sudden it wasn't. All of a sudden it was Brian Flores. Well, I almost for about 3 minutes got myself sucked into, he's learned everything under Belichick. He's known nothing but the Belichick way. He'll be able to implement and duplicate everything Belichick for like 3 minutes. And I said, wait a minute. What about the 14 other coaches that have come out of the Belichick system and fallen on their face? None of those guys were able to implement that. So all I can say for that is I hope that Brian Flores comes out and tries to be Brian Flores and not Bill Belichick. And I know that they're bringing in some experience to try and help Flores, because he really doesn't have a long track record of leading men. That's a concern. The biggest unit he's really led, quote unquote, coached in a group setting is a linebackers unit. So that's not very big. He has been the de facto defensive coordinator. Then I have to ask, well, why didn't they just really make him the actual defensive coordinator? Was it because they didn't trust him with the position, or was it to hide him, kind of, quote unquote? I had a few Pats fans, and I'm not saying these are just fans. These are not like sources I claim to have, like some people. But these are just fans that said they really thought that maybe Belichick was just kind of trying to hide him. They say he gave him the money, gave him the responsibility, but didn't give him the title. I don't know if I buy that or not. But let's just hope that, I guess the biggest thing will be is that Flores, Greer, those guys all have to be on the same page, and Ross has to be on board with whatever those guys are doing. We can't hear about this draft that all of a sudden, Ross comes down to the war room and it starts freaking out that they need to make a different move and go in a different direction than he thinks they're getting ready to go, or they just did.
Well,
like we heard about last year.
Well, let's be fair to Ross here. If his choice was to trade back, get more picks, and draft Lamar Jackson, he would have looked pretty darn smart right now.
I got to be honest with you. Lamar Jackson doesn't really impress me all that much. I don't know that he's going to be that fantastic. Yes, he was winning games, but he didn't look great doing it. Guess we're just going to see. He was a rookie. He didn't get to play a lot. I'm not saying he's bad, but I wasn't super impressed with Lamar Jackson. I'd much rather have Minkah Fitzpatrick. I personally think if we got into a trade scenario, for me, Minka Fitzpatrick is the only player on the entire team that is untradeable, that you just don't get rid of a guy like that, because he could be the quarterback of your defense for a decade. And, players like that, they don't grow on trees, especially on the defensive side. That's just my opinion. So, all I hope is that they can come to a consensus of what they want to do with this team, what direction they want to bring this team in, and how they want to build this team kind of from the ground up, which obviously we're going to talk a lot tonight about quarterback. I believe starts with the quarterback position. If you don't have that right, you're never going to have long-term success. You'll have little bits and pieces, little blips, but you'll never have long-term success without a great quarterback, or at least an extremely good quarterback, a much better quarterback play than we've been dealing with the past, 18 years since Marino retired, but especially over the past 7, 8.
I understand what you're saying. Like I said, we'll get into the quarterbacks a little bit later, but right now, I'm pretty sure that the whole reason for this new structure, where the only guy in charge that has to be talked to is Chris Grier. There's nobody else that runs this team right now. There's no more three-way between the head coach, the GM, and the VP or whatever. There's
no more group think. There's an actual hierarchy of decision making, which is how it should be, and what we've complained about for years that we didn't have.
Yes, Ross seems to have learned his lesson in that regard. He's now putting one guy in charge, and that guy in charge is the guy in charge of the head coach, and the head coach deals with the players and everything that happens. There is no head coach. As far as I know, there's not going to be any, the head coach gets to choose the personnel. Oh, no, the head coach gets to choose this guy, whatever. I'm sure he's going to be able to say, I would like this person, but ultimately it's up to Grier to decide what happens and what doesn't. So it's not Brian Flores' call. His job is to coach the players, which I am perfectly fine with at this point, because I am sick and tired of finding head coaches who have more responsibilities than simply running the football team. I don't want a guy who's going to go in and run his specialty. I don't want a guy who's going to go and try to do extra work that he's not prepared for. Adam Gase, this is a lesson we learned from Adam Gase, as far as I'm concerned. The lesson we learned from Adam Gase is that head coaches need to be CEOs of the football team. They just do. They need to be guys who are running the show and are not concerned about whether his offense looks amazing or his defense is running smoothly. Like I wanted Vic Fangio, who actually now went to Denver, and because of what he could bring on defense, but that's more about the defensive scheme that he would run, not so much, he's a genius and he'll run the defense and everything will be wonderful. Vic Fangio seems like an old school, I'm going to run this football team kind of coach, the kind of coach that is going to make sure that everything is running smoothly. And that was what made me want Darren Rizzi as the head coach if Chris Richard wasn't the guy, because Rizzi does not have a specialty beyond special teams. He would be the CEO of the football team, and whoever he brings in is going to be taking care of that other responsibility. And that's what I wanted. Somebody who's just going to be the guy in charge. So Flores does have a specialty, so to speak. He has the defense, which is fine, I suppose, but the way I see it and the way that Flores seems to come off, I don't see him as going to be a dictator over the defense, if that makes any sense at all. He's not going to be hovering over everybody on the defense, making sure that everything is just so the way he likes it and completely ignore the offensive side of the ball, which would have been like opposite scenario with Gase, but that's how it was. It's like Gase didn't care about the defense. Gase didn't pay attention to the defense. Whatever happened on defense, if something went wrong, it wasn't his fault because he wasn't looking at it. And that is just something that we cannot have. Whatever happens, it needs to reflect on the head coach as well as the coordinators. Gase would push aside the responsibility of the defense onto Matt Burke, who, by the way, also was not ready for defensive coordinator responsibilities. So I kind of like the Flores hire in that regard. He doesn't seem like the kind of guy who's going to be a dictator. Lots of people talk to him about how down to earth he is. He's humble. He's not an arrogant screamer kind of guy. And we didn't see Gase screaming a lot, but he was definitely arrogant. And so the longer this goes on, and the longer I see the kind of staff that he's putting together, he's got, again, Patrick Graham coming in to be the defensive coordinator, Chad O'Shea to be the offensive coordinator. And then you have, I can't remember his name. It's actually escaping me right now. The assistant head coach,
Jim Caldwell.
Jim Caldwell, that's the guy. He's a veteran. He's what Dolphins fans were wanting Gase to do before he got fired. He's a veteran who used to be a head coach. He has that experience. He knows what it means to put in that kind of a grind. He is going to be able to, in a manner of speaking, mentor Brian Flores and show him the ropes of this is how you become a head coach in the NFL. And this is the kind of stuff that you're going to have to do. And I'm perfectly fine with that.
Okay, a couple thoughts on what you were saying there. I'm going to go back to the Rizzi thing. I did not want to hire Rizzi as the head coach. I felt that was keeping too much of the same. We're already retaining Greer, who's had quite a bit of his hands on this team now for a decade plus, especially on the personnel side, the player side, quite a bit. He still even bears responsibility for some of the picks that aren't very good. Now, which picks he was for and against and how much, we don't know. So, but I'm okay with it. I'm okay that they retain Greer. But then if you were going to take Rizzi too and now make him head coach, I mean, what's next? They get together and decide let's keep Tannehill for another year? I mean, what really would the changes have been? So I don't know if I was going to buy that. I really wanted somebody from completely outside the organization to come in and do that, because then it just feels like we're doing it last year. We always have these leftovers, these kind of carryovers, and I just didn't want that. And then just the biggest thing, though, with the coaching staff and, like, Jim Caldwell coming in, you can bring Jim Caldwell in all day, but it's kind of like if you have, a president who has no experience, but you try to put a real experienced vice president. Well, from past experience that doesn't necessarily going to happen. This guy's the president of the team. He's the head coach. His inexperience is going to show at first. It just is. But let's just see if he has the skill set to overcome it. If he has the skill set to be a head coach, he'll be able to overcome it. At times, I wonder if Gase still has the skill set to be a head coach. He never really seemed to overcome certain things. Things that plagued him 3 years ago plagued him towards the end. They even got worse. So I think we'll know quickly, even though we'll see some mistakes from Flores that are like, oh, he's kind of a newbie mistakes. We'll know quickly if he has the skill set to do the job. I'm hoping that he will.
Okay, well, let me ask you this then. Then what kind of mistakes are you expecting then that Caldwell wouldn't be able to nip in the bud before it happens?
That'll be mostly stuff on the field. The kind of mistakes I think you'll see from Flores will be on the field type mistakes, mental errors in the coaching piece. Caldwell will be able to help some with that. The kind of stuff that Caldwell's not going to be able to overcome are the root of being a head coach, being, like you said, a CEO of all your coaches underneath you, how you prepare the team, how they practice, from how you keep them in line, how you keep them motivated, how you keep them together as a unit. These were the things that Gase never really seemed to fully figure out, and it showed. It showed towards the end more than anything, because he lost the team, he lost the locker room, he lost the players. Player after player started to turn away from him. So Caldwell's not going to be able to fix that if that's something, a skill set Flores doesn't have. But if it is a skill set he does have, it doesn't matter that he's been head coach before or not. If he has that skill set, it's going to show in this team within a few years. As long as they can get the player part right as well, especially the quarterback position, it's going to show. If he doesn't, it's going to show. Caldwell won't be able to help him with that. Caldwell will be able to help him on the field with, in-game management. That's where Caldwell's going to be able to help him.
All right, so basically the question is not so much Caldwell's influence on Flores overall. It's you're questioning whether Flores has the leadership qualities.
I'm not questioning it. I'm just simply stating that we'll know quickly whether he does or not, because it'll start to manifest itself in the team, whether he does or doesn't. As we could clearly see, Gase does not. And Gase can go to the Jets and try and figure it out, but I'm telling you right now, I don't think that guy has the skill set to be a head coach. I think he's just missing some pieces in his personality, in the way he does the job. And it's not going to matter that Sam Bradford's his quarterback versus Ryan Tannehill. That's just my personal belief. And Sam, whatever. Sam, whoever he is.
Sam Fred.
the next ex-quarterback of the New York Jets, I'll call him. It's not going to matter, in my opinion. But with Flores, I think we'll be able to see quickly. And, you'll hear great stuff at first. Who cares what you hear during the offseason? It's all fluff and BS. We'll know within a year, but maybe by year 2, we'll know. We'll see. Does Flores have his stamp on his team? Is he got something going in the right direction with this team, or does he not? Of course, the personnel is going to also go a long way in telling us that, but that's more on Greer, I guess, now than it's going to be. But is he getting good development out of these guys? Are guys flourishing under him? Are guys that you wouldn't think, are some of the lower round picks? Are they playing beyond expectations? These are the kind of things you're going to see if Flores is up to the task or not. You're gonna see, and whether he has experience or not in that case isn't going to matter.
But you said 2 years in we'll know the answer. Okay, so here's the question: do you give 2019 Flores a break, knowing that the team is not going to be pushing that hard?
Well, we don't know what they're going to do. Who knows to say that they're not going to try and draft their quarterback this year?
Well, even then,
if they try and draft their quarterback, if they feel like they have their quarterback this draft, let's say they draft their quarterback this draft, they're not going to be taking their foot off the gas. They're going to be trying to make it happen. Doesn't mean they're going to have a good year because they may strip this team down anyway. But it does. So it's not really that.
But that's what I'm saying. Even if they draft the quarterback, if you're saying they're going to strip down the team, even if they draft a quarterback in 2019 with a stripped down roster that has only like the bare essentials and players that may kind of make it look like they're not tanking, even though they actually are. Because all the reports that have come out have said that Greer knows this team needed a reset. It needed a reset, and that's what he is attempting to do. So that's why I'm asking, like, if Flores only gets 2 years to prove that he has what it takes, 2019 counts, even though it's going to be a team that doesn't have all the pieces it needs.
If players in this team are starting to turn their back on him, if he's continuously having personnel issues, if he's continuously having to move and ship people out because of personality issues like Philbin and Gase had to, then he does not have the skill set to be a head coach, and will probably be looking for another one in another year or two.
Okay,
that's how you'll know right there.
So if players complain, that's what it'll tell you.
Well, it's not just about complaining. Is he complaining about them? Is he not able to take talented players and make it work because he's having personality issues or having locker room issues or whatever have you? We've seen it now for how many years? The last 2 head coaches in a row. We've seen that because neither one of them were good head coaches. They didn't have certain things that you need to be. I keep saying skill sets. They were missing a certain, Liam Neeson term, set of skills to do the job. They just were. They just are, and Gase will continue to struggle. He just will. Flores may come in and not have those issues ever. You may never hear a peep about that stuff. If by the end of year 2, regardless, especially if they're not playing well, especially if the team just isn't very good because we've had to strip it down and we're not adding a bunch of 1 and 2 year free agents because we're really just trying to do this thing the right way and not put Band-Aids on it. Especially then, if you're not seeing those types of problems manifest themselves, you'll know that you might be on the right track if you can get the player side right. Okay. If you can get the quarterback position right.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and jump into the quarterback position then, since we seem to have talked up to the coaching positions here. So, like we said, the Dolphins are probably, all reports are that they're going to be moving on from Ryan Tannehill, for better or worse, whether you like him or not. I know I do, and I wish him luck wherever he lands up, but seems like he won't be doing it in the Dolphins uniform any longer, much to the relief of many who, even if they think he's a good quarterback, are tired of seeing his face, so they just want somebody new. And I can understand that. Believe me, I can. I do. Even me, who is a Tannehill supporter to the very end, I think he needs a fresh start somewhere else. So, the Dolphins are talking to a bunch of quarterbacks at the Senior Bowl in Alabama. They've already spoken to Drew Lock. Let's see. They've already talked to, who's the other guy? They're looking at Daniel Jones. So, those 2 guys right there are people that they've already talked to. I think they talked to one more, but I can't remember his name. They have not talked to. They have. I don't. For what I know, I don't think they're currently looking at guys like Kyler Murray. I don't think they're looking at guys like Dwayne Haskins. I'm sure they're doing their homework just in case something horrible happens, but they're not the guys that we're hearing about. So right now, it's Jones and Locke for targets that we're getting reports about. So, what are your thoughts on those two for potential quarterbacks?
Boring, and not what this team is going to be about. They're not about to take some boring mid-first round Tannehill dude, put him back there, like you take Locke, for instance, a guy who has tip balls at the line and has no pocket presence, and you're going to put him back there and go through that crap again. I don't know a whole lot about Jones, honestly. I really don't. Unless you move up for him, he's probably going to the Jaguars from what I read anyway. Locke probably going to Denver. No, they're not going to be about that. If the kind of quarterback I think this coaching staff and Greer are going to be about is they're looking at the way the game is played now in the NFL and the way some of these teams are having success with some of these quarterbacks. And Locke and Jones are not those guys. That's old hat, man. Murray and Haskins that's the type of guys they're going to look at harder. And I know and I understand maybe Murray and Haskins are not on their radar because even though they want that, kind of new NFL speed, the rules are different. You can't really hit the quarterback. It doesn't matter that they're a little smaller now. You can run around. I mean, look at Josh Allen and what he did in Buffalo, especially towards the end of the season, what he was able to do with his legs. Once he figures it out, he's going to be over Sam Darnold. He's going to be the one that scares me the most in the AFC East, honestly. I mean, that's the kind of quarterback I feel like this coaching staff and Chris Greer are going to want to go after because they're going to see where the NFL is headed, where it already is. I understand that 90% of you out there listening completely disagree and think I'm an idiot, but I'm telling you, you're going to see I'm right. That's number one. Number two, we can argue all day about what happened in last year's draft, but the Dolphins organization put a ruse on the NFL and played them like I've never seen them played before. Do you think Chris Greer wouldn't pull that card out of his playbook again and pretend to feign interest in guys like Murray and Haskins just to want to go and then draft a guy like that and pretend they're interested in Locke and pretend they're, I'm saying, trust me, they'll try that again because it worked masterfully before, trying to pretend they were interested in these quarterbacks they were never going to draft just so they could land somebody like Minkah Fitzpatrick at that pick. So I would not put it past Miami to have serious interest. They never even brought Minkah Fitzpatrick in for an interview. They never worked him out, nothing. That's how you secretly draft a dude. That's how you get it done. So pay no attention to any reports because no one had that guy on the Dolphins' radar. Everybody was talking quarterback. They completely fell for it. Do not pay attention to reports that state that they are not interested in Haskins or Murray because I beg to differ.
All right, I can understand your thought process there. I guess the question then is, so you're saying that what they need is Dwayne Haskins and Kyler Murray. Okay, if they can't get either of those guys, then what? Do you just not draft a quarterback? Is that what you're doing? Going to give up if you can't get one of those guys?
Yeah, maybe draft a mid-round quarterback if one's available that they like. They may draft multiple quarterbacks over the next few years. Maybe just go and grab a guy like, and they may already do this anyway. They may go grab a guy like Tyrod Taylor for a season. Bringing Tyrod Taylor onto your team isn't going to win you 10, 12 games and bring you to the playoffs. It also isn't going to keep you from drafting a first-round quarterback in the next year or two. He's a one-year contract kind of guy. Somebody like that, just to kind of play the quarterback position because you're not going to if Tannehill's gone, you're not necessarily just going to hand over the keys to Falk and Fales. So you're going to have to bring somebody in if you're moving on from Tannehill, which we absolutely have to move on from Tannehill because we can't play that game again. Not that he wouldn't be okay to be that stopgap guy, but unfortunately with the history of him and the team, the fans, they're not going to do that. They're going to move on. Almost, if nothing else, for political reasons, they're just going to move on. So you're going to have to bring somebody in, especially if you're not willing to move up to first or second and get a guy you feel like you really like that and I don't think they're going to do that. So They could draft Murray at 13. They could draft somebody else at 13, come back and try and get Murray if they wanted him. If they don't want those guys, they'll probably just wait till next year, bring in a Tyrod Taylor type guy. And they're not going to bring in a lot of, 1-2 year free agent Band-Aids. They'll bring in a few. Everybody does. But they're not going to do a whole bunch of that. They're going to save money. They're going to save picks, whatever they can do. They're in it for the long haul. They're in it for the long game, and they know they need a big-time top 5 type quarterback. They need big-time play from the quarterback position in order to compete long-term for a decade plus. That's what Ross is talking about. Only the teams that have a really top quarterback do that. You can flash in the pan with a Trent Dilfer every now and then and an all-time once-in-every-20 years defense, but you ain't doing that for 10 years straight. No team does. You need the quarterback. And they know that, and that's what they're going to be after, whether it's this draft or the next or the one after that.
I don't know, man. I'm still on the bandwagon of just hang on, bide their time, wait for 2020, because that seems to be where the top guys seem to be ready to come out. Like there's, I said this to you off the show, and I said that I wasn't going to say it, but I think I'm going to say it anyway. This draft, beyond Haskins and maybe Kyler Murray, because again, I there was actually a guy who was putting out some GIFs of Murray playing against Alabama, and it wasn't pretty as far as the way he has a base and how he throws the football. What he does is he's in a manner of speaking, he is a much shorter Patrick Mahomes in the sense that his baseball background comes into play here. We know about Patrick Mahomes's background in baseball. He was a shortstop. He was a very good one at that. And he chose football, and he's taking those baseball skills and he's using them to his advantage on the football field. He's just making throws that look more like they belong at shortstop in the Major League Baseball league than it does on a football field. And he's making it work. Murray does it the same way. The way he throws the football is very similar to how he does a baseball. And he has a tremendous sense of leverage and vertical passing game. Like he can throw a lob anywhere, and he can make it so that his guy can. He's very accurate when it comes to squeezing it into tight corners, finding just the right spot to get it at. But he apparently struggles with slants. He apparently struggles with pressure up the middle. Like he gets off his base and he starts doing like a Cutler thing where he throws off his back foot and stuff. That's not good. So when people say that he's Russell Wilson, I have to say, okay, are you basing that off of just the fact that he's short, or are you basing it off the fact that he can actually do the things Russell Wilson does? And that's what I'm worried about, which if you do believe that and you don't think Murray is worth it, then now you're stuck with just Haskins. And this draft, beyond those two guys, as far as I can tell, I'm not a draft expert. I do not go out of my way to spend hours upon hours scouting out players. I have to listen to other people who do that job and see what they say. But so far, what I am understanding, what I am gathering from all of this is that this 2019 draft, as far as quarterbacks go, it's just filled with Ryan Tannehills. Seriously, it's filled with Ryan Tannehill project quarterbacks who you would not draft in the first round unless this is one of those situations. This is what happens every single year. Since quarterbacks make the money, since quarterbacks are the things that everybody looks at in the NFL when you're fans, it's like, who's the quarterback? As long as we know the quarterback, we're smart about football. That's how it works with this league. That's how it works in fan bases. That's why that networks always talk about the quarterbacks, because that's what people tune in to see. They want to see what the quarterback is doing. They're not interested in the offensive lineman. They're not interested in what your linebackers are doing or anything like that. They want to know about the quarterback. And that's why so many years, every single year, all these guys end up getting hyped up, pushed up into further and further up, because you need to hype up the quarterback so that people will tune in and watch it, because that's how the game is played. So we're hearing stuff about now Drew Lock getting pushed up into the first round. We're hearing things about Daniel Jones being pushed up into the first round. Why? Because that's all there is available. Because right now, all you really have is Haskins and Kyler Murray. And we thought we were going to have Justin Herbert available, but he decided to go back to school, so that didn't happen. So they lost a guy. So now they have to push these two guys up instead. And there are other guys out there, I'm sure. There's like Jordan Ta'amu. I know that somebody had mentioned him. Actually, one of our writers on PhinManiacs actually brought him up as a potential mid-round guy that we could look at as a project, which is fine. I'm not against drafting a quarterback at all. I mean, but just don't expect him to come in here and be a superstar. You have to have realistic expectations for what you're trying to get. So if you're going to be pushing up Daniel Jones and Drew Lock into the first round, understand that what you're going to be getting is very similar to another Ryan Tannehill, a project guy who needs time to develop, some time to cook, and maybe, just maybe, if you're lucky, you'll be able to fix the flaws that they have, and they'll be able to get something out of it. And that's not to say that Kyler Murray and Dwayne Haskins don't have flaws of their own. They do. When people say that this quarterback draft is not as talented as the one previously, there are some people who say otherwise. There are some people who say that that's not true, that Haskins is better than some of the guys that were drafted last year. And who knows? Maybe he is. Maybe Haskins is better than Josh Allen. Maybe he's even better than Josh Rosen. But the way I see it, like, this draft, in as far as quarterbacks go as a whole, is not as talented at the top as the last year's was at the top. Now, again, I remember, here's why I say at the top. This is why I make it very specific. Who was drafted after the first four guys? You had Baker Mayfield. He went first. Then you had Sam Darnold. Then you had Josh Allen. And then Rosen went to the Cardinals. That's the order it went in, right? It was Mayfield.
I believe so.
Yeah, Mayfield, Darnold.
I know it was Mayfield, Darnold, and I think it was Rosen Allen or Allen Rosen. I'm not really sure.
Okay, yeah. So Allen and Rosen. He was like the only one left on the board by the time Miami got to pick. So, and then right at the tail end, the Ravens drafted back up into the first round, and they got their hands on Lamar Jackson. He was the last guy who had any potential as a first-round quarterback, and like he did decent in Baltimore. He wasn't that great throwing the ball, but doggone it if he wasn't electric as a runner, and that's what pushed the Ravens into the playoffs to begin with.
It won them games, man. It won them games.
Yeah,
I don't think Lamar Jackson's arm talent or talent skill as a quarterback is near what Kyler Murray's is, and I don't think his ability as a runner and just an electric football player, to a guy that could be like a Mike Vick type of difference maker with his legs. I don't think that Jackson is what Murray is either. Personally, that's just my opinion.
Are you saying Murray's better than Jackson or not?
Absolutely, on both sides of it, on running and throwing. I believe that Murray's more talented than Jackson.
Okay, well, we'll see that, but frankly,
we will get this. Hey, you know what? Someone's going to draft Murray next year.
I'm sure they will.
We're going to see more Jackson. Someone's going to draft Murray.
Unless he feels well. Here's the thing. We will, unless he feels that he's not going to get enough money off the bat, that he decides he goes back to the Oakland Athletics because they'd be able to give him more money. That's the thing.
I got you. There's still that chance that he could back out and not actually. Yeah, go
exactly.
Into the draft.
This is what people got mad at me for saying this about Kyler Murray, because, like, how dedicated are you to your craft? If you are willing to, they got to be like on a human perspective. Like, I understand the human element of it. Believe me, I am all for this kid getting as much money as he possibly can, because when you're an athlete, you only have a limited amount of time to make as much money as you possibly can. And if you feel like you can get more money playing baseball, more power to you. But that does give me cause to pause, because how dedicated are you to my team as a GM? If I'm the GM, I have to look at you and say, how dedicated are you to my team? How dedicated are you to the sport of football? How much do you actually love the game that you're willing to take a long, hard look at the baseball field if you feel like you're not going to be getting enough money? And that's something that I have to be concerned about, because it's like, if your dedication is, what do all the best quarterbacks have in common? They all love football with all their hearts and souls, and they pretty much dedicate their whole freaking lives to the sport. Murray's not doing that. Murray's keeping his options open in case he doesn't get a large enough paycheck, which I'm fine with on a human element. But from a football evaluator perspective, I have to look at it and be like, okay, are you serious about football, or are you just trying to make sure you get as much money as you possibly can?
Well, here's the thing, though. I feel like if he was only after money, he'd just be going to play baseball. He wouldn't even.
Well, no, because he gets more instant money playing football. In baseball, you have to wait a while.
Yeah, a little bit, but the money's going to be there for him in baseball. Like, it's an unquestionable. It's not even a question that he won't eventually get into the money in baseball. I mean, it's just not a question. In football, it's a big question. So it sounds to me like his heart is he wants to play football, but he doesn't want to be some fifth-round pick that stays on a team for a year, maybe goes to a team another year, and then that's it. It's over. I think that's probably a concern for him, as right it should be, because that's a big difference in the rest of his life and his family's life.
Right.
If he's doing that, so he's taking a risk, and I think that he's taking that risk is he wants to go be a quarterback somewhere. He wants to go play football. So in my mind, I mean, I think it's okay that he still keeps the option open for now, but once we get closer to the draft, he's going to have to convince teams, and I believe he'll be able to, is that he is, if I draft you, you're coming to my team. You're not going to, go do something else, go play somewhere else, and go play baseball. And I think if he was just interested in money only, he'd just go play baseball.
All right, that's fine. Like I said, I'm all for this kid going after his money. That's not the issue I have with it. The issue I have with it is his dedication level. That was the only question mark I had.
Yeah, I think the fact that he's even entering the draft and not just going to play baseball indicates that his first love of sport is football. And if I drafted him as a baseball player, I'd be the one concerned that his dedication to the sport isn't there, that he really wants to go play football.
Well, I'm sure the Oakland Athletics are dealing with that right now.
I'd be more concerned as a baseball GM than I would as a football GM.
I'm sure the Oakland Athletics are dealing with that little issue right now.
Well, they knew it was a chance when they drafted him, but they I mean, that's not the only time they've ever done that. I mean, hell, wasn't John Elway and Dan Marino both drafted into the major leagues? I believe they were. I know at least Dan Marino was.
I remember my father gave this to me, a little booklet that was basically like a brief history of Dan Marino, and I think I remember him there was a picture of him playing baseball. I can't remember with what team though.
It was more than he played baseball. He was actually drafted. I'm trying to remember. It might have been the Pirates. It might have been the Padres. He was drafted by and I think Elway was too. So it's not the first time that's happened. Baseball take that risk for whatever reason. They'll spend a first or second round pick because picks just aren't as valuable.
Okay. I actually looked it up right now. It's Marino was a pitcher and he was drafted by the Royals in the 4th round of the 1979 amateur draft. He didn't sign though.
Okay. Yeah, no, because he went to play football.
All right, and let me see. Since you brought him up here, let me see real quick. John Elway. Let's see. Oh, the Royals. He was drafted by the Royals, too, in 1979, the same year. They were both drafted by the Royals, and the Royals didn't get either of them.
Well, there you go. So, for whatever reason, baseball is willing to take that risk, but I think it shows that his true love is football. That's what he wants to play. That's my opinion.
Oh, wait, hold on. Okay, that's fine, but I just saw a little tidbit here. So apparently Elway was drafted twice. In 1979, he was drafted out of high school by the Royals to play baseball. And then in the 1981 MLB draft, Elway was selected by the Yankees. I'm like, okay, how do you get drafted twice?
I don't know. Who knows how baseball works? They're weird. I just feel like another thing, too, is I believe that Murray is trying to play football, but he's trying to get drafted higher, which is why he's coming out this year instead of deciding I'm just going to go play with Oklahoma one more year and then go, because of the way the 2020 quarterback class is looking like it might bear out, he's going to have a lot more competition. There's a chance he could be drafted a lot lower. Now's his time. If you're going to get drafted, if you're going to be a first rounder, you got 5-6 quarterback needy teams right now. Very few that those teams can go after. Wentz or Foles, both of them ain't going to be Eagles next year. So one of them's going to another team. Beyond that, I mean, unless somebody wants to take their shot at Tannehill, and try and make him into their starter. Unless if you're like Jacksonville or somebody like that, and you want to take that shot, if you don't get your quarterback in the draft, I mean, now's your chance to be a first round pick. Honestly. I mean, so I understand why he's doing it now, but he wants to be a first-round pick. He doesn't want to be some 3rd or 4th round guy.
All right, Ron, I definitely see where you're coming from here. Oh, and ladies and gentlemen, we just got our usual guy going on in here. My usual co-host has just come in from the below zero cold in Iowa, and he's with us here on the show. How are you, Chad? Are you thawing out yet?
I'm thawing out slowly, doing well.
It's nice to have you on with us, man. And so, all right. So we've already talked a little bit about coaching staff and quarterbacks. So I'm actually going to give you your shot to talk about, because the last time we did the show, we were actually saying what we would do as the GMs. And now that we've had a couple weeks to wait and see what happens, we kind of already know what the GM is planning to do. And as far as rumors we've heard about the quarterback's position. So I'm just going to let you do your thing, and then we're going to move into something else. Go ahead.
Sure. Well, It's really tough for me to evaluate the coaching staff because there is nobody there that's really coached. I know the rumor is that Jim Caldwell is coming, but I don't believe that's been confirmed, has it? That he's actually been hired.
Well, none of the guys have actually been hired officially yet because they can't, because Flores is still about to be in the Super Bowl. But as far as we know, all these guys who are lined up, there have been no reports saying that they're not going to come. So
gotcha.
As far as let's call it 99.999% chance all these guys are coming. So let's just assume they are.
Well, I can't, realistically give a review of what I think of the coaches, because a lot of them are positional coaches that are moving up, to a higher position right now. Obviously, it's a lot of Patriots coaches, which, considering how successful the Patriots have been, I can't think that's a bad thing necessarily that we're picking up a bunch of Patriots coaches. I think the two biggest storylines, if you will, right now for me are, one is most of our coaching staff is now the coaching staff of the Jets, which means we'll be facing them twice a year, and we've taken a lot of the Patriots coaching staff. So it does make me wonder a little bit what's going on in New England with what their plans are, because is that 2 or 3 now assistants that have been rumored to be coming over from New England, maybe more.
Okay, so number one is Brian Flores, who is the supposed defensive coordinator, linebacker coach guy who's going to be the head coach. And The other one is your brother from another mother, a Chad O'Shea, who is who's a wide receiver coach, which I'm perfectly fine with considering how Patriot receivers function.
Right. But weren't they also talking about Bienema, if I'm saying his name right, the old coach from Wisconsin?
I only know Bienemy.
Bienemy. Sorry, Bienemy. I mispronounced his name. Is he on the? I thought. Yeah, no, not him. Who was the former coach of the Wisconsin Badgers from a few years ago? Who's now on the Patriots staff?
You beat the heck out of me. You're gonna. Okay.
I'll get it for you right now. Anyway, I thought they were talking to him. I could be wrong, but I thought he was going to possibly come on as a defensive assistant as well. But anyway, long story short, I just kind of wondered, the Josh McDaniels stayed last year, was that where he spurned the Colts? I think that was last year.
Yeah, and O'Shea actually would have gone with him otherwise. Right,
and so I'm kind of wondering though, with that being said, how close is Bill Belichick from retiring? Because it just seems a little crazy that so many people are taking off now. Maybe it's just the success and stuff, but I'm just curious to see how that's playing out in New England, because they're going to have to be getting a new staff over in New England. Not a whole new staff, obviously, but they're going to need to be, because I'm understanding Flores is kind of the de facto defensive coordinator. So they'll be looking, for a new defensive coordinator, and we're taking the quarterback's coach to be our offensive coordinator.
No, the wide receiver coach. We took their wide receiver coach.
He was the wide receiver. I thought he was the quarterback's coach. He was their wide receivers coach that's becoming our offensive coordinator then, right?
Right.
And Brett Bielema, if I'm saying his name right, Bielema, he was the Wisconsin coach from 2006 to 2012. I want to say he's also on the Patriots staff, and they've been some rumors that he's going to come over as well. Anyway, the storyline with that is what does that mean for the Patriots right now? Obviously, you've kind of followed around on Twitter and stuff that if the Patriots were to win the Super Bowl, is that going to be the last hurrah for Belichick and Brady, or are they going to keep going? And
I guess I have to ask you then: are you going to root for them if that's the case, Chad?
Of course. I mean, I would like to see.
Oh my God,
Belichick move on. I mean, they've just dominated the division, and it would be an interesting division next year to come into if there was a new quarterback and a new coach in New England, with everybody be kind of like a reset button on the whole division. But I have to think with some of the lower assistants jumping over with Miami and Josh McDaniels staying, I have to think that they're getting close. Like that has to be within the year. Well, obviously age is playing in that as well. But anyway, that's the storyline for me, is what's going to happen to the Patriots if they win the Super Bowl. And the other storyline obviously is, are we right or wrong? Obviously, I've been very, very critical of Adam Gase. I did not think he was a good coach. I didn't think the team was well coached or prepared. And I guess we'll find that out almost firsthand now that that pretty much that majority of that staff now is over coaching the Jets. And so did the Jets just get better or did the Jets just get worse? I think the majority of Miami fans think the Jets staff just got worse. So it's going to be interesting to say the least when those games go. It's going to be interesting seeing Adam Gase stand on the sidelines wearing all Jets gear in the stadium this year at Miami. It's going to be, I think he'll get heckled quite a bit. It's going to be a lively event. In terms of quarterbacks, I've kind of got the least popular opinion on quarterbacks right now because despite all the negativity, I still think Ryan Tannehill is still a functional quarterback in the NFL. And if I just say, let's say you rate him at the 20th best quarterback in the NFL, I'm just throwing a random number out there. I'm not saying that, but obviously what's changed in Miami is he's never been a top 10 quarterback. And the big change now is I think people are realizing that he's never going to be a top 10 quarterback. And so when you have a quarterback that's getting into his 30s, that's never going to be a top 10 quarterback, that kind of is like saying we're never really going to be competing for a Super Bowl until we get a better quarterback. So that's the change we feel in the air right now, is that Miami's realizing we need to go get a better quarterback. The issue is since Dan Marino, we haven't really had a better quarterback than Ryan Tannehill, and it'd be very easy to get worse than better at that position right now. And I think a lot of the starting quarterbacks around the league throwing some names out like Andy Dalton, Kirk Cousins, maybe he comes back, Alex Smith, maybe worse, Jameis Winston. These are all starting quarterbacks, Ryan Fitzpatrick in this league that I think Ryan Tannehill is probably better than, easily arguably as good as. And so I am very against the idea of just cutting Ryan Tannehill. I think what needs to happen is a new quarterback needs to be brought in, preferably a rookie. It needs to win that job from Ryan Tannehill. Otherwise, I think we're going to take a step back at the quarterback position. And this draft is not one I'm too excited about. Other than Haskins and Murray, I don't know about Drew Lock. Is Drew Lock really better than Luke Falk? That would be a question I would have, maybe for some more of a quarterback gurus. But I don't know that I use my number one pick on him with the names that are in the 2020 draft this year. So I would potentially use that pick on Kyler Murray, depending on how committed he is. It's because he's a special athlete, but it's a tough year to get better at the quarterback position, and I don't think you can do better than Ryan Tannehill in free agency. I know you have Nick Foles and
Teddy Bridgewater. That's the name.
But I look at that, and so there's a big salary cap hit on Ryan Tannehill that you can wait until June and cut him and spread that out, but you're not going to sign Teddy Bridgewater that any cheaper, and he's got a much worse injury history than Ryan Tannehill. He's had a really, really severe knee injuries. So,
the injury I'll agree with, but I don't believe that he won't come cheaper because Tannehill's going to count for $20 million. I don't think Bridgewater is going to get signed for that much.
Yeah, but the problem, Lewis, is a lot of like a huge chunk of Tannehill's money has already been paid to him that he's counting against the cap. Like you get rid of him, it just converts to dead money. And so the point I'm making is the amount of money you'll save cutting Ryan Tannehill, you're going to have to put into a different quarterback. And so I absolutely am against putting more money in towards future cap. Like, what's it going to take to sign Foles? What's it going to take to sign Bridgewater in a market where there's going to be some competition for them? I really don't want to put a bunch of money into them because I just don't feel they're that much. I don't think they make this team a Super Bowl competitive team, swapping out Ryan Tannehill for Teddy Bridgewater or Ryan Tannehill for Foles or worse, you go the wrong direction, you get like a Bortles or somebody that is even worse than Tannehill. You could easily go that direction. I think this team has to draft that quarterback, and this team has to keep Ryan Tannehill until that quarterback has beat him out. Is obviously a better quarterback, and I don't know. The position is so hard to get better at. I would rather overpay Ryan Tannehill to be.
Tannehill's going to be cut, and Tannehill needs to be cut because you don't move on from a coach who lost the locker room, and the biggest reason he lost the locker room, he wasn't willing to put any blame or move on from Tannehill. Move on from that coach and then keep Tannehill. Cap or no cap. 20th quarterback, 15th quarterback, 12th quarterback, whatever. None of it gets us to the Super Bowl. Teddy Bridgewater or not, or whoever you're going to bring in, I think you're going to bring in a one-year guy and draft somebody this year or next year. They're not keeping Tannehill. They're moving on from him, and they need to move on from him because then we're just kind of right where we were. You're not going to move on from a coach and fire him who pretty much lost his locker room because of a guy and then keep that guy. I mean, he's a holdover from 2 coaching staffs ago. He will not be retained. He will not be kept. He absolutely will be traded or cut. It's 100% for me, and I think it needs to happen. I see some of the things you're saying, Chad. They make sense, but not all decisions are made on pure numbers. And sometimes it's just things have to happen because they have to happen. And this is one of those cuts that's just going to have to happen.
All right. So my question is, when you just cut in March, like the moment free agency, you're just going to cut him?
Well, let me just chime in real quick. I think they'll trade him and they'll get something for him because whether you think he's good or not, he's still a quarterback and somebody's going to go for him.
That I will say this. I agree that Tannehill no longer should be the starter on the team. I will also say that Ryan Tannehill, to me, has never been a locker room problem. Now, will he become one if he's not the starter? Maybe. I don't know. He doesn't seem like the kind of guy that's problematic to me. Does the team need a new direction? Yeah, they do. But I will say if you cut Ryan Tannehill, he becomes the most coveted free agent quarterback on the market. He will be chased harder than Teddy Bridgewater. He'll be chased harder than Nick Foles because honestly, he's better than those guys.
I don't know about Foles. I don't know about Foles just because of recency bias.
But think about the strategy in that. If you're interested, if you are interested in a quarterback, maybe this year or even next year, wouldn't you like to eliminate one more team out of the fray that you're competing with? If that's the case, if Ryan Tannehill is so coveted, then my God, let him be gone and let one of these 5 or 6 needy quarterback needy teams take him, and now you have one less quarterback needy team. And the money he's going to require, if you sign him, you're going to get that contract too. Even if we cut him, you're bringing on that money. You're probably not going to be going after a quarterback next year either, likely, unless you're in a really good cap spot. Because now you're going to be eating more. Because if you sign him, you're signing him for a long-term deal, at least probably 3 years. So guess what? If you do that, you're going to take yourself out of the quarterback market. So you know what? Let's let him go. Let him go to Jacksonville. You know what I mean? Let him go to one of those teams that will regret it, and we can be done with it. So even more reason to get rid of him.
Right. So I'm in agreement on getting rid of him. Don't get me wrong. My incentive here isn't to say let's go with Ryan Tannehill another year, but I think you got to think further ahead of the game right now. I think Ryan Tannehill is going to be coveted on the free agent market. Is he a top 10 quarterback? No, but look what Kirk Cousins just got signed for by the Vikings, and I don't believe Kirk Cousins is any better than Ryan Tannehill. Look what Alex Smith. Look how he went to the Redskins. My point is, I agree with you, Ron, but if I'm the coaching staff, I'm saying Ryan Tannehill's a damn good quarterback. We're going to roll with him, and in the meantime, I'm going to go draft my guy. I'm going to go draft my rookie if I can. It's not a great draft for it, but if I can get my hands on a guy I feel good about, absolutely. But I want to get Tannehill in there. I might even start him into the second half of a preseason. I want to see Tannehill light up some third-string defenses in the preseason. Get into that June 1st cut where if you have to cut him, you're spreading out. But I'm trying to trade him for the maximum value I can get out of him. And I honestly believe all you need to have happen is have Ryan Tannehill look good in a preseason game or two, generate a little bit of buzz about him, and you just need to wait for a team to lose their guy. You need to see some quarterback get hurt seriously in training camp or the preseason, which will likely happen. One guy will get hurt, and suddenly the best available option becomes Ryan Tannehill, and that's when we part ways with Ryan Tannehill. I'm not a big advocate of just cut him because he's not the guy. I really think we can get maybe a second or third round pick out of him if we play our cards right. That's what I want to do with him.
Well, if he's going to be so coveted as a free agent, the number one coveted free agent, we don't need to let him show some preseason, a game or two. They have 8 years of tape on the guy. If he's that coveted, they'll be able to trade him right away. Well, they won't have to wait.
The value, though, he's not going to have value until after the draft, number one, because some teams are going to see who they can draft. And two, you've got to let free agency play out a little bit. Some teams may not like who's available, though. They may not like their options, and especially where they're drafted, and they may not want to move up. That's perfect. We want to hit a team that's after the draft, preferably in training camp when one of their starters gets hurt. That's when they're going to be the most desperate and willing to part with a higher pick, because Tannehill at that point will be the best possible option because Bridgewater will have signed with somebody, as will have Foles. I just don't see. I can't with a straight face say, hey, we're going to sign Teddy Bridgewater to a 3-year deal and make a run at the Super Bowl. Or we're going to sign.
Oh, absolutely not. They're not doing that.
That's what those guys are going
to. Not happening.
I agree, 100%. And so my thought is we have got to draft a quarterback.
100%. Yeah.
Unless Luke Falk is something special, but I can't believe he is when he went in the middle of the draft last year and got cut. If he were really special, he wouldn't have been available on the open market like that. So I just want to hold on to Tannehill. If I have to cut him, I'm going to do it after June, so his salary cap spreads out. But I'll cut him later. I'll let him sit on the roster because, again, is he going to be a malcontent and cause trouble? I just don't sense that Ryan Tannehill is that kind of guy. So just leave him on the roster. If I could do it the way I want to, I would get Kyler Murray at 13. I would pull the trigger on him, and even if I'm wrong, I don't care because he looks like a really special athlete. Get him going and sit with Ryan Tannehill. I'll play poker and act like Ryan Tannehill's my guy, and we're going to develop Kyler Murray until that opportunity comes up and somebody gets hurt or somebody misses their guy in the draft, and it's a team that's got high expectations, and so they're desperate for an answer. I'm giving them Ryan Tannehill as their quarterback, and I just start playing Murray right there. That's my dream scenario, is to get a second or third round pick out of Tannehill for the 2020 draft and get like Kyler Murray. I mean, I'd take Haskins too. I just think Haskins is going to be first or second overall, and so I don't think I want to pay the picks that it would cost to move up and get him.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is a strategy that can be employed. I just don't have. I do not believe that's the strategy the Dolphins will employ. I just think that they're leaking so much already that they're going to move on from Tannehill. That he's whatever it is, March 3rd, 4th, 5th, whatever. He's gone. He's gone. They'll try and seek trade partners for a little while, but he's going to be gone quick. They're going to just move on.
I don't think
there's a politics part of it too that plays into this, and it may not make the most sense fiscally, and you know what I mean. It may not necessarily end up for them the best way as far as draft picks and everything. But there's a political piece of this too that has to be weighed in, and I just think they're just going to move on. Not saying it is the best choice, just saying it's the choice I think they're going to make.
That could be. I don't know if they're going to do that with the cap. But it makes a huge difference to cut him before or after June 1st on the salary cap implications. Because I think if you cut him before June, all of his guaranteed money hyper accelerates onto this year's cap, and so we would. Yeah,
I don't think they're going to care about the cap this year. I don't think the cap's going to be a concern. I think they're going to be moving on from so many players and making so much cap room and doing so many things that it's not going to matter to them. They're not putting themselves in cap position right now. They're going to be putting themselves in draft position, and they got to put themselves in the right position with the locker room, with the players, with the team, with the fans, all of it. I don't think they're going to be that concerned about his cap hit.
Well, if that's their goal, is to focus. Okay, so let's say they do that. I just want to walk through that. So you're going to cut Ryan Tannehill, and you'll accelerate his cap hit. So your cap space is going to drop. So you're sending the message to the fans and the team, we're not going to attempt to compete this year. We're going to just
but they sent that message on the first press conference with Ross and Greer. They already went out and said it out loud. I mean, I don't want to. Ross says, "Well, I don't want to go 1-15 or whatever he said, but we got to do what we have to do to compete for a long period of time to be a competitive team." They've already sent that message that that's the direction they're going.
Correct.
That's why That's one of the reasons that we know they're not going after Foles or Teddy Bridgewater, because neither one of those moves makes sense with that statement.
I'll say if they do that, this head coaching regime will not last more than 1 to 2 years, because this team will get annihilated. Then not because of Tannehill.
I think they know that.
I'm just saying, if you want to build a culture and win a locker room, showing up on the first day of free agency and sending the message we're not even going to compete will not win you a locker room. As a matter of fact, I think the majority of the players, like if I'm Xavier Howard, there's no way in the world I would re-sign with the team that threw the towel in like that. I want to be on a team that wants to try to win. And so I
gotta be honest with you. Cutting Tannehill in March is not throwing in the towel, man. Throwing in the towel is staying with Tannehill and accidentally ending up with him as your freaking starter because your quarterback you drafted either sucked or you didn't draft a quarterback and he was all you had. Right. That's throwing in the towel. And then going 6-10 and not even hitting on the quarterback you want to for 2020. That's the pathway you don't want.
But you're throwing in the towel in my mind, Ron, because if you cut Ryan Tannehill before the draft, you've just told everybody you're desperate to go after a quarterback in the draft. If you keep him and play the game that we're good with Ryan Tannehill, then maybe Kyler Murray drops to 13. But if you cut him, you have just increased the odds substantially. Somebody's going to try to jump up in front of you to get Murray in front of you in the draft because they know you don't have a quarterback. Nobody's going to take you seriously.
That's a good thought, Chad. Now that's a good angle that I can buy.
That's the point I'm trying to make is this. I hope the fans don't get mad, but you have got to sell that Ryan Tannehill is your guy to increase his trade value and to manipulate the draft, and you don't really want to cut him until June. Now, if this team marches out on opening day with Ryan Tannehill as a quarterback, I'm with you, Ron. I think then you're losing more fan base than if you just rolled with Falk. I mean, I think you'd be better off just saying we're going to start Luke Falk for the year. You'd have a happier fan base with that. But I don't think he's toxic. I mean, I can understand if you have an Antonio Brown situation where the team's against him, then you got to just cut him because he's causing locker room troubles. But I think you can go to Ryan Tannehill, say, hey, we are moving on from you, but we need you to be a stand-up guy for us. We're going to try to facilitate a trade. I think Tannehill will be okay with that. Maybe he won't. I don't know. But I'm hoping that's what they do because, to me, this team has no chance of competing unless they make a move in this draft for one of those quarterbacks. And if they don't do that, I think that's going to be harder than anything because I know everybody likes to say, we'll just go to 2020, but there's no guarantees. You don't know if those quarterbacks are going to get hurt. You don't know if they're even going to commit to the 2020 draft, some of those big names. And so this team has got to make a move, and I'm hoping that move is, go get Haskins or Murray, even if they're not complete quarterbacks and they're ready. I mean, that's what Lamar Jackson was last year. And I was really hoping that we would have went and got Lamar Jackson last year. I'd like to have him right now. And just run a new style of offense. If we go cut Ryan Tannehill and then turn around and take that cap savings and go sign Bridgewater or Foles, I'm just going to be disappointed because I don't think we've done anything but just waste cap space on not getting anywhere.
All right, so there's just one more thought, though, I want you to think. There's another scenario that can play out. Keeping Tannehill turns out real badly. So you keep Tannehill and you tell the world, hey, we're going to roll with Tannehill to play a game, play a trick, whatever, which the Dolphins are not beyond. They played tricks last year with the draft. Me and Lewis talked about that before. Right, so you do that. So that means you pass on the one-year stop guys because they'll probably find other jobs. The one-year stopgap guys, Tyrod Taylor, Ryan Fitzpatrick, some one-year safety nets in case, A, you don't get your quarterback, or B, that guy's just not ready to go out and he's going to need a year to sit behind just anybody for a while. So those guys are gone. Then you don't hit your quarterback. Now you're sitting, and then anybody you had a shot at, now you're sitting there and guess what? In 2019, Fales, Falk, and Tannehill. Who do you think's probably winning that job?
I don't think.
And now Tannehill's your starting quarterback.
I don't think Fales makes it. Fales isn't making the team. To be clear on that right now.
Okay. Well, bottom line, who's your quarterback? Tannehill's now your quarterback with that scenario.
No, if it's me, I wait, and if it doesn't work, so if we get into June, July. And I personally think quarterbacks are so valuable, you're going to get Tannehill traded. I strongly believe you'll get him traded. Maybe you won't get, I want us to get a second or third round. Maybe you'll have to settle for like a 5th round pick or something. But somebody's going to have either their starter or their backup hurt. And there's a lot of teams with a boatload of cap space, and they'll pay just to have Tannehill as their backup. Because any other team but the Dolphins, they can take Tannehill because he doesn't have the stigma for that team that he has in Miami. So if it plays out so you just can't get rid of him, nobody will give you anything for him. I cut him somewhere from the 1st of June to the middle of July. Somewhere in that time frame is when I cut him. And I think what they'll do if they can't get a quarterback, I think they're going to draft somebody. Even if they don't get a top 2 or 3 rated quarterback, they're going to draft a quarterback. But I'm not afraid. I think they're going to use Jake Rudock as their number 3 quarterback right now in that scenario. And I think the number 2 quarterback is Falk right now, and I don't think they have their number 1 yet. If you can't get a number 1, I don't think you need a stopgap. I don't think Tyrod Taylor helps you, or a guy like that. I think you just start Falk. And if your worst case scenario is you start Falk and your backup's Jake Rudock, I think that's their worst possible case scenario. And I think people would rather see that than you bring in a Tyrod Taylor.
I don't know. Does starting Falk not say we're throwing it in, mailing it in, and not trying this year? Because you're saying that you're going to lose fan base with that, but sure hell sounds like that's what it's going to tell a fan base when you're starting Falk.
I'm telling
we're mailing it in, guys.
To be clear, I'm not saying you're telling the fan base you're mailing it in by getting rid of Tannehill. I'm saying you're telling the fan base we're not trying to compete this season if you cut him before June 1st. Because it makes way more sense to spread his cap hit out over 2 years. Because even if you're not going to compete in 2019 and you want to save cap space, it just carries over. It makes no fundamental cap sense to cut him before June 1st unless you can trade him. Otherwise, you're just limiting your ability to do anything in 2019. So
let's just hope they can trade him. And this hasn't even come up as a topic of conversation.
Well, I
hope they can trade him.
I feel very confident, Ron. There's no way in the world this coaching staff is starting Ryan Tannehill on opening day. I don't think there's any way in the world they're going for that. I think he's going to get traded. That's really, I think, the more likely than not scenario is he's going to get traded. And if he doesn't, he will get cut. They're not going to go into the season with Ryan Tannehill. Would be starting Falk throwing the towel to people? Yeah, maybe. But honestly, I think if you put a poll out on Twitter right now and you ask the fan base, who would you rather see as a starting quarterback in 2019, Falk or Tannehill? I think Falk would take it by 70-80% of the poll. People would rather see somebody that has a chance at becoming something rather than somebody they know is never going to be any better than average. So I think you can do that, and I think your fan base would be happier to give Falk a chance and cut Tannehill. I really do.
Okay, so now, for those of you who are unaware, this past Saturday, I was actually able to go to the Jason Taylor Foundation 3rd Annual Wiffle Blast, and I got an opportunity to talk to the guys in charge of the Fish Tank podcast, Seth Levitt, a good friend of mine, and OJ McDuffie. And those guys, we actually talk a little bit about what they do on their show, and I'm actually going to go ahead and play this interview. They're awesome guys. You're going to enjoy it, and let's go ahead and roll tape. All right, so you guys have been doing this Fish Tank podcast for about a year now, I think. So
full season.
Yeah, full season. All right. So far it's been an incredible experience to listen to you guys have stories. What would you say so far has been your favorite story to hear?
That's a tough one. Juice can take that.
Yeah, well, there's been a bunch of fun ones, man. It's like I think my favorite might be did Lewis tell that Brian Cox story on air?
Lewis did tell that story. Yeah.
Brian Cox in Buffalo, and
with the little
splash in his face in the stands. That was the Buffalo fan. He was ready for him after that win. I think that was my favorite because it was totally unexpected. I think
that came out of nowhere.
Out of nowhere.
I mean, it's the last thing I heard. We knew Brian, had it out for Buffalo fans, but I didn't expect that.
And I think Chain getting his ass worn out. That's one.
Fight at the University of Florida. Channing, yeah.
They wore my ass out.
Channing had a few good stories. The Matt Roth story. My name is Matt. The Butch story, that might have been my favorite.
Butch. Yeah, there's some great stories though, man. And still more to come. I can't wait for Harvey to drop. Yeah.
So who else do you have coming up soon so we can have to look forward to?
Well, this Tuesday, Harvey Green, my old boss, who had stories about Dolphins, Yankees, unbelievable stories.
Yeah, a little bit of Cavs.
Had some Cavs stories. Got to talk Cleveland. With OJ. Always got to talk Cleveland. I shouldn't say just with OJ because that's how I got my start too. But JT obviously is committed. Pat Surtain, Mercury Morris. Yeah. So just a lot of guys.
Sam's coming in. We got Danny on it. Danny's hooked on it.
Yeah.
We tell Danny some stories. He just sits in the office and just laughs, man. So we're going to get Danny on. It's a little tough for him being part of the organization still. So he's not ready to bring it, but we're going to get him. We're going to get him.
Yeah. Got a lot of good guests coming up.
We want to bring guys on like Bobby Monica. Guys that like a Tony Aquin story. Those are some of the best because of behind the scenes stuff. That's why Harvey's episode is going to be so good.
Absolutely.
And how exactly did this podcast come to be? Like you guys had to have come together and be like, let's do this.
He's going to blame me. You know what? It's kind of a year ago I would have never thought we'd be doing something like this. I mean, OJ and I go all the way back to my rookie year, right? 1996. But so we've always been tight. And funny enough, before I ever even got into the foundation, I used to help OJ not only with his foundation, but OJ was in the forefront of athletes and websites, and he used to do live chats. And I can type a little faster than OJ
I can't type it. I'm a bird pecker.
So he would give answers, and I would, use my typing skills and help him with that. And so it was almost kind of a prelude to what we're doing now.
Right.
But Ethan Skolnick launched the 5 Reasons Sports Network and was telling us all about the different shows that he had. And, I kind of started thinking about it and started talking to Ethan, and he said, you're right. Unfortunately, the team isn't doing what we'd like to see them doing, and the nostalgia is something that we'll never forget, And he said, Seth, you've got so many contacts, I said, I can't do it by myself. And OJ called me to ask me a question one day, and as soon as I didn't even call him back yet to see why he was calling, but I was like, I got an idea. And OJ was in from the beginning, and here we are almost on 30 shows.
Yeah.
And so now that you guys are doing this, you guys have like the inside scoop on all these stories, things that is there still stuff that you feel like some of the guests that you've already had, they haven't told us yet that we can hear later?
No doubt. No doubt. There's a lot to be told. I told Joe Rose that the other day. I said, you held back a little bit on us, Joe, so we're going to get you back on. So, and there's been a lot of guys that have been on that when they get off, they're like, oh, they want to tell this story or that story. So there's a lot of guys with more stories to tell. So they've been holding back. They didn't know how to handle a podcast at first. Whether you could swear on it, what type of story should they tell. But I think they're going to be a lot more loose moving forward.
I imagine that it's kind of hard to like balance out knowing when to stop and when to keep going because it's like their stories could last like an hour if you let them. So how do you balance that out? Do you ever feel like you're going to have to do like 2-parters or something?
Well, we did with Channing. Yeah, because
we wouldn't let him stop. He was just on a roll.
If he didn't have to go work for his own radio show, we would still be talking to him.
That's right.
And every story would be new. But we watch the clock, and then we also kind of what you just said is that we don't want to give it all out in one show because we want to bring guys back. So we had a great first season. We're going to do kind of every other week during the off season, and then we'll pick things back up in July and go weekly again. And we should have some repeat guests, but there's so many guys we haven't even talked to yet.
Right.
And so is that what the show's always going to be focused on, just the past? What's going to happen when the team starts doing well? Because we all hope that that's what's going to happen. Are you guys going to start giving like your personal insight based on your history with football?
Yeah, we're going to keep it ours based on the past, and there's so much that's happened in the past. And, we're also going to venture into talking to some other guys that play for other teams against the Dolphins, which is going to be fun for us too. Guys like Ty Law and, guys that have played well against us. That's going to be a fun part of it too, seeing the other side and how they prepared against us, any funny stories against us and things like that. So there's so much stuff going on, but the past is where we're going to pretty much focus on.
Are you going to go grab Leon Lett out of somewhere?
I'd like that. I'd love to get Big Cat out there, man. What a great athlete and a guy that Jimmy stuck by for years, on a couple different things he did, but he was such a great athlete, great player that, hey, a couple mistakes didn't kill him.
Yeah, and we have guys who talk about the current stuff on the network.
Right.
The 3 yards per carry guys are as good as anybody out there, I believe.
Right.
And I think that The 5 Reasons Sports guys as well. They talk about all the current stuff. We like to tell the stories that you don't hear every day in 1,000 different outlets.
Now that you guys are, how far do you envision this going to go? You ever think you're just going to run out of stories eventually, or are you going to retell some stories?
Well, I don't think retell them. I think that it's going to be, like I said, guys have so many stories they don't even know. We'll bring on different guests, and they're going to, like I said, they've got so many stories. I've got 1 million stories, so I know everybody we've talked to have 1 million stories. So we'll see. And people bring up different things that spark their memory. And then they'll be ready to tell some more stories. So I think that, there's many people that play for the Dolphins, played against the Dolphins, been a part of the Dolphin organization. We got stories that can last for a while.
Yeah, there's tons of stories. And, the thing for us is, OJ and I knew right away that we'd say we have lightning in a bottle. Because this is the stuff, when we're all sitting around, just our close group of friends, right. These are the stories we tell anyway. We play on the basketball court or whatever it might be. But we had a feeling that people who don't get to hear this stuff normally would eat it up. And we know that they will. And we just need to educate people on the podcast process. They've caught on to the blogging. They follow what you guys do. They read it. They get the tweets. But we need them to just download those podcasts because I think they have no idea what's in store for them.
So before we bring this to, is there any stories that you can come off of right off the top of your head that you could maybe tell so that we can put this on the site? Right off the top of your head, any story you want.
Ooh. Well, I don't want to tell.
Go ahead, what you got?
So OJ and I, and we just had Harvey Green in, and we were talking about, I won't put the person's name there, but we had an intern one year in the PR department that just didn't connect with OJ. It just, and
he's a bugaboo, man. I promise you, man. He's a bugaboo, bro.
So we were just telling the story where OJ came to me, and he's like, look, I understand everybody's got a job to do, but I'll deal with you, I'll deal with Harvey, I'll deal with Neil. This guy, give him somebody else, give him to a rookie, give him. And so OJ made it very clear to me. And so we go downstairs that same day and we're waiting in the locker room. And I turn to Harvey and I say, where's the intern? And he says, oh, I just sent him to go see OJ about. I said, oh no, why did you do that? Next thing you know, the door kicks open. OJ comes in, I thought I just told you. You would have thought he just lost a game. He was so heated. And Harvey learned real quickly, and I filled him in on the situation. And that intern's had a great career in sports.
Yeah.
He just is not OJ's guy.
Not my guy.
He's not OJ's guy.
I just realized whose guy I was the other day. Now I'm good, though. Now I know. I should have known then whose guy I was.
Yeah, Harvey had a hierarchy of how the players were dealt with, and OJ had no idea.
I didn't make the top echelon for it. It took me years to get to the top echelon.
Until he had those 90 catches.
That's right. Then all of a sudden,
he was Harvey's guy.
I got rid of right.
Okay, he became juice, and then it's like, oh, okay, now
he started as juice.
Always the juice.
But, you lead the league in catches, Harvey starts to remember where you are. All right, man.
Thank you, brother.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it. Hey, I appreciate it.
You got it, man. Thanks for coming.
Hey, I appreciate it.
Oh, man, those guys, they're awesome. So yeah, that was everything that went on. And as a matter of fact, you can go right now onto iTunes, and I think I don't know if they're on any other outlets right now, but I do know that I listened to it actually just this evening on iTunes. They already released their episode with Harvey Green. I've run into Harvey a bunch of times covering events and stuff like that. The guy's like a total trip. He's hysterical. And I listened to their show this evening, and it was, again, it was per their usual. It was hysterical listening to the stories and the insight that these guys have. Like, you have no idea just how many stories, how many background things happen that we just never know about until they come on to the fish tank with Seth and OJ, and they just it's almost like you could take all the stories that these guys have told already, and this is just like the tip of the iceberg. You could take all those stories that have been told and just have like this tell-all book that is like 500 pages long, and it was hysterical, and I'm really glad I got the opportunity to talk with them about it. So absolutely, go and subscribe to The Fish Tank with Seth and OJ on iTunes. You will not regret it. It was an awesome time, and I guarantee that you will enjoy every single minute of it. It is a must listen for all Dolphins fans out there. Okay, so before we go ahead and call this a night, I did go and put out a questionnaire. I guess I can call it that. I basically tweeted out that we're going to be doing a recording, and if they had any questions, to please let us know so that we can address it during the show. And now is the time, right before we put it to a close, that we're actually going to go ahead and do just that. So, what the question that we got was. Let me see if I can pull it up here real quick. I know I need to go and grab it. Okay. So it comes from MC Bruce 575 on Twitter. And he asked the question, hasn't Greer mentioned certain prototypes and measurables he likes to follow for different positions? If so, do you really think he would take a chance on going against those in his first draft to take Kyler Murray? Okay, so before I let you talk, Chad, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to address this real quick. Okay, number one, this is not technically Chris Greer's first draft. Greer has been scouting for the Dolphins for several years now, and regardless of whether you believe a certain player is a Tannenbaum pick or a Gase pick or whatever, Chris Greer is the one who gets final say on all the draft picks. So this is not technically Greer's first draft. The only thing that this is his first draft in is this is his first draft as the only man in charge. This is the one where he has final say on everything, not just certain things. So in that regard, yes, it is his first draft, but Greer has been doing this for a little while now. Now then, as for the molds that he's referring to, this is what I'm actually going to talk about. This was back in 2016, and the question that he was asked was whether they were looking for a different cornerback prototype compared to previous years. This is what Greer said regarding prototype corners and stuff like that. This is referring to prototypes. He said, quote, "We always take the best player. At the end of the day, every staff really has what they're looking for in terms of prototypes, etc. You also have to be flexible. If a guy is an exceptional player and an exceptional athlete at that position, maybe you'll make the exception and take that player. Really, it'll be whoever the best player on the board is at that time." Now, this was back in 2016, and Tannenbaum was with him on that moment. And now this January. This was actually said just today from the January 24th. Chris Greer. Excuse me. This is actually last year. This exact day, January 24th of last year at the Senior Bowl, and Tannenbaum was there too. And this is what Greer said regarding quarterbacks, because this was obviously when the Dolphins were looking at all these quarterback prospects and whether they were going to draft one. And this is what he was asked regarding what the important attributes in quarterbacks that you would want on the team, because this is basically what it boils down to. What are you looking for in a quarterback? Greer said this, quote, "I think the big thing is leadership. You need a guy that's kind of a dynamic personality that knows how to handle people, both good and bad, because you're going to have ups and downs. You need a guy that's steady, and I think the important thing is a guy that is a winner. I think it's important for a guy that's won in high school, won at the college level. You're trying to look for a lot of stuff that may translate to our level, but the college game is different than our game. It takes a lot of work, and our scouts do a great job in terms of background and digging and stuff. Those are sort of things we look for, and then as we get to know the people. This is just phase two, really, the whole offseason process. We're still early in it, but we're looking forward to get to know not only quarterbacks, but a lot of guys at other positions as well." And now this is one more thing, because they followed up on that question. He said, he was asked, when you're watching them on the field, what are the traits that you're looking for in your quarterback? Again, Greer said this, quote, "Obviously how he carries himself. It's important here for Mike Tannenbaum and I." Of course, Tannenbaum's not here anymore. "We were talking, and we like to watch the guys and how they handle themselves around the group with their teammates and coaches. The event, they've been thrown in like a fishbowl here. Media's here, and they have new teammates and a new coaching staff. You just watch how they interact with that. But then when you watch it on film again, you don't really. I like to see them when they're in their worst, when they're struggling in a game, and how they pull themselves out of it, or how they really rally their team. Those are always things you really look for. Again, just being able to see these guys live helps us tremendously with the evaluation process." All right, so that's the only thing that Greer ever said about finding a prototype. I don't recall any moment when he said he's looking for a tall guy or a strong guy or a guy who hangs around in the pocket. From what I remember and from what these quotes are saying, really the biggest thing that they're looking for is a guy who has leadership and is able to pull himself out of a funk if necessary and can pull things out of the fire when things are going bad. So that doesn't necessarily mean he's looking for a running quarterback or a pocket quarterback or anything like that. So I don't think there's anything stopping them from picking Kyler Murray if they want to. I just don't know if they actually will, because, again, this draft class is not very strong, and I imagine that there are going to be teams fighting to get their hands on Haskins and Murray. Okay, Chad, your thoughts?
Well, covering a lot of what you said, I agree with you on Greer. I think he was who did the majority of the scouting. I think he was picking Gase's guys in the draft, like what type of players Gase was after. But I don't think it was. That's just my perception. I don't know this, but I don't think Tannenbaum was near as involved in the draft picks as Greer was. I think Tannenbaum was more of a contract negotiator, chase some free agents, maybe work some trades with the other teams. But I think when it got down to the nitty gritty, Greer was one evaluating the talent, and that's why I think he got elevated to GM. I think you agree with me on this one, but I thought Greer has done a pretty good job. If you consider some of our past drafts, I agree. He's done a pretty good job at bringing in some talent. So with that said, this is clearly Greer's team now, and Flores is clearly Greer's guy, and they're going to be working very closely together, and they're clearly putting together the staff that they want. I would think it's pretty safe to say, once you've talked to Adam Gase, been around Adam Gase, he's a very, very strong personality, and this was Adam Gase's show, and it is now Greer's show. And I think he'll be working hand in hand with Flores. And I think that'll be a good thing, because I do think the reason that Flores is here is him and Greer have the same philosophy in what they're trying to do. Now, trying to equate that to what they're going to do with the quarterback's really hard, because I have no idea what that means. If a leader. I do think that there's going to be a handful of teams that won't want anything to do with Kyler Murray in the NFL, because in the first round, I mean, I don't mean they wouldn't want him, but I don't think there's a lot of teams that wouldn't draft him high because of the talent in the draft on the defense. There's some really talented defensive linemen in this draft, and it's hard to roll the dice on a Murray if you can get a blue chip lineman, because there's no way around it. Kyler Murray's a risky pick. He's not prototyped in size. He doesn't have a lot of college experience. So I have a hard time thinking there's going to be a lot of teams really excited to chase Murray. So he's going to be one of those quarterbacks where it's very difficult to project him, because you're right. It's a light draft on the quarterback position. And so Murray is going to be more valuable in this draft. If he went into next year, he might be like the 6th or 7th rated quarterback, whereas he's like being talked about as the second quarterback in this draft. So I think Miami's one of those teams that'll take him. That's where I'm at, simply because of their situation. Ron was accurate in that this team needs to get away from Ryan Tannehill. And what options do you have? Because I think that Haskins is going to go top 5 for sure, maybe even first overall, because he's probably going to be the number 1 rated quarterback in this draft. I don't want to see I'm not that sold on him being an amazing quarterback. I understand he's the highest rated quarterback in this draft, but I don't give up an extra first round pick to try to move up from 13 up to try to get him, or whatever that would cost. It would be expensive in draft picks, and I don't think Miami's in a position to give up a bunch of draft picks right now to go get him. Murray at 13 is a strong possibility. I don't think he's going to get rated as highly as you think, because there's not that many teams in front of Miami that need a quarterback, which means some teams got to trade collateral to go get him. And that means the teams that do need a quarterback have to be sold that they want to give up a blue chip player to grab him. So I think the chances are better than people probably think on Murray falling there. And I do think Miami's one of the teams that would take him. I have no idea, though, beyond the need. Just looking at the staff they're putting together, I feel like maybe they'll roll the dice, because if you draft Kyler Murray, you're running a different style of offense. You're not drafting him to set him in the pocket. It's going to be interesting at the combine list to see what he really is, because I've seen him reported as 5'8", and I've seen him reported as 5'10", and there's a big difference between 5'8" and 5'10". I mean, you're talking about sitting in the pocket at 5'8". I don't even know if that's realistic at all, because it's going to be so hard for him to see over the linemen. So if you're going to draft a Kyler Murray and he is, say, 5'8" or 5'9", you're drafting him with the idea that he's going to be moving around all the time in the offense. He's going to be taking off and running a lot, and that style of an offense. I don't know if that's what you're going to get out of Flores or not, because he's been a defensive guy on the Patriots who's been around Tom Brady, and so he's watched a pocket quarterback that wins by knowing what's going on prior to the snap and then just ball placement. Tom Brady obviously isn't a guy that takes over a game with talent like a Cam Newton or somebody like that. Tom Brady wins by always knowing where to go with the football before it's even hiked, and just has the technical sound to always make that throw where he wants it to go. Is that what Flores is going to look for? Is he going to look for a really, really efficient quarterback that can do that, or are they going to be looking for a dynamic playmaking quarterback? So I don't have any way to know that, to be honest, Lewis, who they're going to chase. But their offensive coordinator is another Patriots guy. We were talking about that earlier. So it's really, really hard to get a feel for that, what they're gonna go after. And I know it wasn't very popular with Rama. I don't know that there's anybody better in the free agency pool in the draft than Ryan Tannehill at being that style of quarterback, who's just going to do pre-snap reads and know where to go with the football. Because Tannehill actually is pretty efficient at taking care of the football and not making a bunch of poor decisions with the football. I mean, every quarterback makes a few, but Tannehill's problem's always been his ability to feel pressure in the pocket and ability to perform in big games. And so I don't know. I really don't. Beyond that, I'm hoping that they are going to get. I just think the fan base wants that. I think they would rather see the team draft a Kyler Murray and just play that wide open offense. It's maybe going to turn the ball over a little more, but it's going to put points on the board as well. I think everybody's tired of having one of the worst offenses in the league for the last few seasons now, and they want to see something dynamic. So that's what I think. Now, if Caldwell comes over, he was a Lions guy, isn't that right? Wasn't he the head coach of the Lions for a while?
He was the head coach of the Lions, yes, and he was with the Colts for a while with Peyton too. So his quarterbacks would be Peyton Manning and Stafford then, right? That would have been who I'm guessing. I believe so.
So those are pocket type quarterbacks, not a prototypical quarterback who's going to run around with the football. So
I guess that's it kind of has become. It kind of feels like it's become that, right? Like nowadays, the prototypical quarterback is the guy who runs around and does stuff. Like it's kind of been reversed.
Well, yeah, it's changed. I mean, the rules have changed in the league, but I mean, the biggest thing now is college quarterbacks right now are running those styles of offense. Things are spread out. They're throwing the ball a lot more, and you have guys like, I remember when it was unheard of for a short quarterback. Remember when Doug Flutie did it? It was like just unheard of. It's like so wild that you had such a small quarterback. But now, with what Russell Wilson's done in Seattle, he's had a pretty good amount of success. And then when you look at Baker Mayfield with the Browns, you're starting to see these quarterbacks that, I think people are willing to sacrifice maybe having that height to see really well in the pocket to a guy that can make plays outside of the pocket. And Kyler Murray there's absolutely no doubt he's dynamic. He's really fast. And, it's hard not get excited about putting Kyler Murray with Kenyon Drake in the backfield and having Albert Wilson and Jakeem Grant and Kenny Stills at wide receiver, spreading that out a little bit, and just the sheer amount of speed you could push with an offense would be exciting. It absolutely would be exciting. But anyway, I'm kind of rambling a little bit, Lewis, but your points are good. I just, we're in that right now where we have no idea. I mean, it'll be interesting to hear Flores' interview, but we really have no idea what his philosophies are. All you can do is kind of look at what the Patriots' philosophies are, and they're not very good ones, because Bill Belichick's really a defensive genius, and he's had Tom Brady that whole run, and you don't go draft Tom Brady, obviously. So what Flores has, if Flores' goal is to go get Tom Brady, we're not going to do very well, because he's not going to succeed, especially in this draft. There's no Tom Brady apparent anyway in this draft. So,
well, nobody thought Tom Brady would be Tom Brady. That's just it. The whole point of a Tom Brady is that he's that one guy that you just never see coming, and then it's like, holy crap, and for 2 decades, it's holy crap.
Yeah, it is. So, but that's what our offensive coordinator and head coach have been exposed to for the majority of their coaching career is having Tom Brady. So it makes it very, very difficult to think, what are they thinking about doing on the offensive side for a quarterback position? And it's just not a great year for it. I know there's people talking about the 2020 draft, but I'm just very cautious with the plan being get a guy in the 2020 draft because, as I was saying, you don't know who's coming out, if one of those top quarterbacks get hurt right away in college football this coming 2019 season, there's a real good chance they won't declare until the 2021 draft because all those top guys aren't senior guys. And so I think to say, hey, we're going to just have a bad year and go get our quarterback in 2020, it wouldn't be something that made a lot of sense to me. And so I think, Louis, that if I'm doing the wild speculation in January, this team's going to make a hard run at Kyler Murray. I really do believe that.
All right. Well, I guess we'll see. So that's going to be it. Thank you all so much for listening in. And I'm going to have to go ahead and get this thing edited. We had so many snafus during this recording session, but we got through it. So I want to thank Ron, who had to take off a little while ago, and I want to thank you, Chad, for coming on a little later now and being with me here. We're going to try and get this out real quick, and we're going to try and have another show later next week and see what we can do. Hopefully, by that time, we'll have more to say, more news will come out, and we'll be able to have something interesting to say. We've had a lot of stuff coming out on the website lately, and I am very happy, and there's a big thanks to Big Ian Berger for helping facilitate that. We've got a whole bunch of new writers, and whether I agree with them all or not is a different discussion altogether, but they've been awesome with pulling out content for everybody to read, and it's been awesome having them so far, and I'm looking forward to working with them later on in the future. So, again, thank you all so much for joining us. We will see you again for another episode of the PhinManiacs.com podcast, and good night.